This happened 2 weeks ago. I had just returned to my hometown. I thought coming back would be easy, but it wasn't. My mother needed help, and I couldn't say no. I wasn't sure if I was ready to face the memories this place held. One evening, I decided to go up to the attic. I took a deep breath before opening the creaky stairs. The air was thick with dust and forgotten memories. When I opened the first box, I was hit with a wave of nostalgia. I found old toys and clothes. It felt strange to see things I hadn't thought about in years. It was bittersweet, but something else lingered in the air. A chill ran down my spine. Then I found a scrapbook. I opened it carefully. The pages were filled with pictures of my childhood. My heart raced as I took in family gatherings and birthday parties. But then I saw the notes. My handwriting looked strange, almost foreign. I read the entries, but they felt off. I didn't remember those games or those places. Where did these memories come from? The next day, I met some old friends at our usual café. As we caught up, I brought up shared memories. Their faces twisted in confusion. They looked lost. I tried to explain certain events, but I saw panic in their eyes. I was scared. Were my memories wrong? I pressed them to remember, and they did. But nothing felt right. They mentioned names that didn't ring a bell. We were all grasping at shadows. Something felt wrong. When I got home, I thought about the scrapbook again. I stared at it, trying to connect the dots. I wanted to remember, but the harder I tried, the more questions surfaced. I felt lost. It was as if my childhood was slipping through my fingers. As days passed, strange things started happening. I heard whispers, soft sounds echoing in my home. At night, I felt a presence close by. I'd hear laughter, but no one was there. I thought maybe I was imagining things, but it all felt so real. Shadows flickered in the corners of my vision. Then, one afternoon, I stood alone in my childhood backyard. The air felt heavy. I heard a voice. "Why did you forget?" I spun around, my heart pounding. Nobody was there. I wanted to scream, but I couldn't. It felt like I was drifting into something dark. I couldn't shake the feeling that my memories were tied to something bad. I often thought about those whispers in the scrapbook. Then it hit me. The names from decades ago, the forgotten games, they weren't ours. They belonged to something else, something that lived in the shadows. I looked back at the scrapbook, fingers trembling. I realized my childhood wasn't just a happy memory. It was a prison. I had forgotten, but it didn't want to be forgotten. And now it was waking up. I was trapped. I was trapped. I didn't sleep well that night. Thoughts of the scrapbook and the chilling voice haunted my mind. I tossed and turned, listening to the house creak around me. Every time I heard the wind whistle through the old window, it felt like a whisper urging me to remember. By morning, I was exhausted, but I had to find out more. I decided to visit the old library downtown. It was where I used to spend hours reading, but now it felt like a place overshadowed by my growing unease. As I walked in, the familiar scent of aged books mixed with an underlying mustiness hit me. I focused on the local history section. Surely there would be something there about the town's past or my childhood. I pulled out dusty books and flipped through yellowed pages. I was desperate for any clue. Then I came across an old yearbook from my elementary school. My heart raced as I skimmed through the pages. I found my picture and smiled. But when I glanced at the names beside mine, a chill ran down my spine. Some of these names resonated, while others felt completely foreign. One name in particular caught my eye, Melissa Grant. It danced on the edge of my memory, something buried deep. I remembered playing outside with her, but I also recalled an unsettling event, not details, just the echo of fear. My head swam with questions. Why did I not remember her properly? That's when I saw it, a small article tucked between the pages. The headline read, "Missing Girl Found After Decade." My breath hitched. The girl in the picture was Melissa Grant, her bright smile so lifelike. I couldn't shake that nagging sense of wrongness. I scanned the article, my heart pounding in my ears. It talked about how she had vanished at the age of 8, only to be found years later, living in a state that could barely be called human. I nearly dropped the yearbook. So many questions flooded my mind. How had I forgotten her? What had happened to her? I felt the walls of the library closing in, the air heavy. Then a shiver ran down my spine as I sensed someone behind me. I turned quickly, but nobody was there. My breath quickened. The whispers I'd heard at home were now creeping into this place. Panic settled in. I needed to leave. As I rushed toward the exit, the librarian called after me. "Are you all right?" Her eyes were filled with concern, but I couldn't pause. I didn't respond. I bolted, feeling the weight of unseen eyes following me. Once outside, the cool air was a relief, but my heart raced. I stood still, trying to gather my thoughts. I couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong, not just with my memories, but with the town itself. What more had I forgotten? The drive home was haunted by images of Melissa, my mind racing with a mixture of fear and guilt. When I stepped into the house, the air felt impossibly thick. I closed the door swiftly, but the moment I turned around, something caught my eye. On the floor lay a small, familiar object, a toy I hadn't seen in years. An old, dusty doll with a cracked porcelain face. I hadn't remembered it being in the attic. That's when I realized it wasn't just the scrapbook waking things up. I was stirring something far deeper, something that wanted more than just to be remembered. I stared down at the doll, my heart pounding. It was a relic from another time, one I had tried to bury deep beneath layers of forgetfulness. Kneeling down, I dared to pick it up, feeling the cold, cracked surface against my skin. Just holding it brought back fleeting images, laughter mixed with shadows, a feeling of unease that tightened my chest. I had to know more. I carried the doll to the living room and sat on the sofa, placing it carefully on the coffee table. There was a knot in my stomach that wouldn't go away. My mind raced back to that summer when I played with Melissa Grant, piecing together fragments of forgotten days. The last time I could clearly remember her was on our school playground. Then everything faded, like someone had clicked off a light. After a few moments, I grabbed my phone. I searched for old articles about Melissa. As expected, the details were sparse, filled with generic lines about the case of the missing girl. I wanted more. There had to be something deeper. I hit the local news archives, scrolling through the stories about her abduction. Then I stumbled upon a small snippet dated 2 weeks before she had disappeared. A strange occurrence reported at Grant residence. Mysterious lights and sounds heard by neighbors. My breath caught again. Why didn't I remember hearing anything about this? Suddenly, a loud creak echoed from the hallway, pulling me out of my thoughts. I tried to convince myself it was just the house settling, but deep down, I knew I was not alone. I glanced toward the hallway, feeling an urge to investigate, but fear gripped me tight. What if whatever was haunting my memories was here with me now? I tried to focus on the doll as if it held the answers. Something about its presence was unsettling. I looked closely, studying the doll's expression. It seemed to be watching me. I quickly shook off the thought. It was just a doll after all. Then I remembered something else. There had been another friend, a boy named Tommy. His presence from that time felt just as distant as the memories of Melissa. I couldn't shake the feeling that he and Melissa were intertwined in some intense way. I had to talk to someone who might remember. I jumped to my feet. There had to be others from that time who lived in town. The neighbor, Mrs. Fletcher, always shared stories about the neighborhood. I grabbed my jacket and headed out the door, clutching the doll in one hand. As I approached her house, I felt the first hints of dusk settle around me. Shadows lengthened, wrapping everything in an eerie embrace. I knocked on the door, my heart racing, anxiety pooling in my stomach.
Would she remember? What if she didn't want to? Seconds felt like hours until I finally heard the soft click of the lock. When Mrs. Fletcher opened the door, her eyes widened. "Oh," she began, but then hesitated. The expression on her face shifted, something dark and unspoken flickering between us. "Can we talk?"
I asked, my voice breaking the tension just as I heard a soft thump behind me. I turned quickly, ready to confront whatever shadow was chasing me. But once more, nothing was there. The uncertainty hung heavy in the air, and all I could think was I needed to know what was hidden under the surface. I took a deep breath, steeling myself for whatever was about to unravel. In that moment, Mrs. Fletcher's expression shifted to something I struggled to read. I felt exposed, like I had stumbled into a hidden truth, and I was desperate to uncover whatever it was. "Please, come in," she finally said, her voice shaky. I stepped inside, trying to shake off the chill creeping down my spine. The inside of her home was cluttered but warm, filled with the same old photographs and trinkets I had seen countless times before as a child. Taking a seat on the worn couch, I placed the doll beside me. Mrs. Fletcher's gaze fixated on it like a lighthouse beam cutting through fog. "Where did you find that?" she asked, her voice suddenly steady. "I discovered it in my attic," I replied, searching her face for any hint of recognition. "I remember having it when I was little, but it brings back strange feelings. Do you—" She interrupted me, leaning closer. "That doll belonged to Melissa. She loved it. She always played with it in the yard." My heart skipped, and I felt the air grow heavy. "What do you remember about that summer? About Tommy?" I pressed, urgency bubbling up. Mrs. Fletcher hesitated. "Tommy was different. He was always slightly off, you know? The other kids felt it. Melissa, she liked him though. They had their secret games." "What about the lights? You must have heard something. Did you see anything unusual that summer?" I pushed, almost pleading now. Her eyes narrowed, as if piecing together a jigsaw that had been scattered for years. "You shouldn't dig too deep into that. Some things should stay buried." "Why? What happened?" Before she could respond, a loud crash echoed from the back of the house. My heart raced again. I shot up from my seat. What was that? Mrs. Fletcher stood frozen. I don't know," she stammered. Without thinking, I moved toward the sound. I passed through a narrow hallway, the familiar shadows clinging to the walls. I felt compelled to find out what was happening. My instincts screamed for answers. The noise came again, louder this time, like something heavy falling over. I reached the door to the kitchen, and when I swung it open, I was met with a mess of toppled chairs and a kettle rolling across the floor. My heart raced. "Is anyone here?" I called, knowing full well I was alone with just Mrs. Fletcher. "Stay back," she whispered from behind me, her voice low. That's when I saw it, a flash of movement in the corner of my eye. I turned, but nothing was there. My breath hitched. "Did you see that?" Mrs. Fletcher shook her head, her eyes wide. "It's just the darkness playing tricks," she insisted, but I could hear the tremor in her voice. Another loud thump resounded from the corner, and I realized it was the doll. It lay on the floor face down. Something about its stillness felt threatening. Something unnerved me as I reached down to pick it up. Then I felt it, an icy breath against my neck. My mind screamed as I spun around, my heart pounding louder than ever. But once again, no one was there. It was just me and Mrs. Fletcher, and I could sense that something had changed, something dark and waiting. "What is going on?" I stammered, my hands trembling around the doll. As I looked into the depth of her eyes, I could see her own fear reflected back at me. "You should leave," she said, backing away, her voice wavering. "Wait, I need to know the truth." But I was already knowing it, in fragments like shattered glass. Then, without warning, the lights flickered, plunging us into momentary darkness.
And when they came back on, the kitchen door stood wide open, revealing nothing but the encroaching night outside. "Someone's been inside," I said, an electric pulse of dread coursing through me. Mrs. Fletcher's breath caught. "You need to get out of here, now." Suddenly, all my questions felt insignificant against this new threat. I could sense it looming, the very shadows of my past coming back to haunt me. I turned on my heel, driven to escape whatever had been stirred from its slumber, knowing full well that I wasn't finished yet. The truth was out there, waiting for me to uncover it. As I dashed out of the kitchen, I felt the weight of Mrs. Fletcher's eyes on me, a mix of worry and fear. The hallway felt darker now, the shadows seeming to gather like a storm in the corners. I rushed towards the front door, glancing back to catch a final glimpse of her. "I'm not asking for much," I called back, trying to summon courage. "I just want answers." But she just stood there, her silhouette wavering in the dim light. I felt a pang of regret nudging my chest. Maybe I shouldn't have pressed her. But this was bigger than both of us. This was about Melissa, and it was about Tommy. It was about me. The air outside was heavy, the night clinging to my skin. I took a moment to breathe, scanning the quiet street. I considered where to go next. The memories of our old neighborhood rushed back like a flood I couldn't control. I glanced once more at Mrs. Fletcher's house, now dim in the distance, and turned away. I needed to find someone who could help me piece this together. With the doll clutched tightly in my hand, I decided to head to the old playground. It was where the kids used to gather, where laughter and secrets mingled. Maybe, just maybe, I could still find some echoes of that lost summer. The walk felt longer than I remembered. The streetlights flickered, casting strange shadows that danced in the periphery. Each crunch of gravel beneath my feet made me feel like I was being watched.
I shook off the sensation. I couldn't afford to be scared now, not when I was finally approaching the truth. When I arrived at the playground, the swings swayed slightly in the wind, creaking like ghosts whispering secrets. My heart pounded in my chest, and I forced myself to step onto the familiar ground. The climbing frame stood like a monument, and I climbed into it, sitting on the top rung. The view from up here felt different, familiar but distant. I could nearly hear Melissa's laughter, and my chest tightened with the weight of it. I pulled the doll into my lap, examining it again. "What did you know?" I asked softly, as though it could respond. That's when I noticed something strange. The back of the doll's head had a small crack, and inside there was a tiny piece of folded paper wedged deep within. My hands trembled as I carefully pried it open. The paper was old and yellowed, the ink faded but legible. "Meet me by the old oak tree at midnight. Bring the doll." It sent chills racing down my spine. The note felt like a tether to the past, a bridge to whatever happened that summer. I looked up at the oak tree, standing tall at the far edge of the playground. Midnight. It was close now. The hairs on my neck stood on end. Someone knew I had the doll. Someone wanted it, and somehow they expected me. The playground felt unusually quiet as I climbed down the frame. A heavy silence enveloped me, and the shadows shifted, as if anticipating my next move. Should I stay or wait? I knew deep down there was no running from this. I could feel it. Some part of me already belonged to this mystery. With a deep breath, I headed towards the old oak tree, uncertainty gnawing at me, but curiosity pushing me forward. I was no longer the scared child who used to play here. I was ready to uncover whatever dark truths were waiting for me in the shadows. The oak tree loomed ahead, its gnarled branches reaching into the night sky like arthritic fingers. Each step felt heavier, grounded in a mix of dread and determination. The note whispered in my mind, urging me closer. I could do this. I had to know the truth. As I approached the tree, the air chilled, and I instinctively wrapped my arms around myself. The playground was still, but I could sense something was off. My instincts were screaming at me.
I glanced around, half expecting someone to leap out from behind the shadows, but the loneliness was absolute. With the doll still clutched in my hand, I reached the tree. I looked up into its dense canopy, scanning the branches for signs of life. I felt the weight of time press down on me, like the whole world was holding its breath. My heart was racing, but I couldn't back out now. Then, in the dark, I thought I saw a figure move, a shadow detaching itself from the deeper shadows. I squinted against the dim light filtering through the branches. It was just a silhouette, hovering, as if waiting. I steadied my breath. "Who's there?"
I called out, surprise lacing my voice. "Did you bring it?" the figure replied, the voice crackling, low. I couldn't make out any features, but I felt something shift inside me. "Who are you?" I shouted back, fighting to keep the tremor out of my voice. "You know why you're here," the shadow replied, stepping closer, revealing a face that made my stomach twist. It was someone I hadn't thought about in years, someone I had hoped to forget. "Sam?" I breathed, my heart sinking. "We used to be friends long ago. Why are you here?" He smiled, an unsettling grin that didn't reach his eyes. "Because of the doll. It thinks you're ready." "What does that mean?" I asked, feeling the tension rise in my throat. "Some things are better left buried," he replied, the words slithering into the air between us. "But I suppose the past doesn't let go so easily." A chill ran through me. I suddenly wished I had listened to that voice in my head urging me to turn back. "Did you know what happened to Melissa?" I pressed, desperate to piece together the fragments. At my words, his expression darkened. "You should be careful digging into things you don't understand. The past has claws, and it doesn't want you poking around." Just then, a rustling came from behind me, louder than I expected. I spun around, heart racing. What was that? When I turned back, Sam was gone, the shadows swallowing him up. Panic jolted through me as I searched the darkness around the tree, half expecting him to jump back out from the wood. But nothing, just the heavy silence of the night. I gripped the doll tighter, feeling a sense of urgency. I had to figure out what Sam knew. But before I could think, a soft voice broke through the quiet. "You shouldn't have come alone." I froze, realizing I wasn't as alone as I thought. Before I could respond, two shadowy figures emerged from the dark, their intentions unclear. My pulse quickened as I prepared to face whatever was coming next. "Who are you?" I demanded, my voice steadier than I felt. "Someone who knows more than you think," one of them replied, stepping into the dim light. I squinted at the figures, trying to make sense of them. They were tall, draped in dark clothing that melded into the night. I felt exposed and vulnerable. "What do you want?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. "Information," one of them said, her tone sharp like glass. "What do you know about the doll?" The doll? It felt heavy in my hand, a weight I hadn't understood until now. I just found it," I stammered. "It was left behind at the playground." They exchanged a glance that sent a shiver down my spine. "That doll isn't just a toy," the other figure said, taking a step forward. "A key to what?" I replied, trying to sound braver than I felt. "To memories," she said, her voice dropping to a near whisper. "To truths buried deep." A rush of confusion swirled inside me. I thought of Melissa, of the long-ago summer days filled with laughter that quickly faded into whispers of fear. "I need to know what happened to her," I pressed, feeling that desperate tug of the past. "Then you need to understand the doll," the first figure said again, her eyes piercing through the dark. "But it's not safe. You need to decide. Will you follow where it leads, or will you turn back?" The weight of their words hung in the air, and I felt conflicted. Part of me wanted to flee, to get as far away from this madness as possible.
But the other part just burned with curiosity and anger. My heart was a drum, pounding louder than ever. "I'm not afraid," I declared, though I felt the truth nestle deep within me. "I'll do it. I'll find out what happened." "I admire your courage," the second figure said, a hint of approval in her tone. "But remember, the past doesn't forget, and it doesn't forgive." Before I could ask anything more, the landscape shifted. The shadows twisted and spun around us, disorienting me. It felt like the ground was tilting beneath my feet. "What's happening?" I shouted, trying to take a step forward. "Hold on to the doll," the first figure instructed. "It guides you." Then everything went dark. I squeezed my eyes shut against the encroaching blackness, fear clawing at my chest. The next instant, it was as if I were dropped into a different world, a familiar place filled with echoes of laughter and the innocent joys of childhood. I was back at the playground, but it was different now. Colors were brighter, the air thicker with nostalgia. I could hear faint giggles in the distance. My heart raced. No, not this again, I thought. But before I could gather my thoughts, shadows danced on the edges of my memory, swirling around me like a storm. I felt an overwhelming urge to step forward, fueled by both fear and a strange yearning. This wasn't just about the doll anymore. It was about Melissa and whatever had been lost. "Wait," I called out into the thickening mist. "I need to know the truth." But nothing answered, except for the sound of laughter that now faded into a chilling silence. Then a figure emerged from the haze, one that looked like a ghost from my past. My heart dropped as I recognized the familiar outline. "Melissa?" I whispered, dread washing over me. But just as quickly as she appeared, the figure flickered like a candle, casting shadows that seemed to taunt me. "You shouldn't have come looking for me," her voice echoed, and a cold realization sank in. I was deeper into this mystery than I had ever intended, and now choices had to be made. The doll in my hand felt alive, pulsing with secrets waiting to be unearthed. And I was running out of time. I staggered as the playful laughter faded, leaving only a haunting silence. My heart raced, and the doll felt slick in my grip. I couldn't shake the confusion. Was this some sort of trick? "Melissa?" I whispered again, my voice futile against the emptiness.
"Where are you?" But the only response was the echo of my own voice, bouncing off unseen walls. I took a deep breath and scanned the playground. The swings were eerily still. The slides glinted under a moon that shimmered like glass. Reality was warping around me again. I had to focus. I squeezed the doll tightly, as if it could anchor me. "What do you want?" I asked, hoping for guidance. "Find the truth," the air seemed to respond, though nothing in this place felt real. I took a cautious step toward the swings, remembering how Melissa and I would race to see who could go highest. As I approached, I noticed something nestled in the wood chips beside the swing. I bent down, heart pounding. It was a small silver charm, a star. I picked it up, feeling an odd warmth radiate from it, and a rush of memories followed. Melissa, laughing, pointing to the sky and declaring we'd find a way to be stars. The charm slipped from my fingers as another wave of panic hit me. Why did I even remember this? Suddenly, I wasn't alone. A fleeting movement caught my eye. A shadow darted between the slides. I froze. "Hello?" I called, voice trembling slightly. Silence. Then, out of the corner of my eye, I caught a flash of movement again. Whoever, or whatever, was here with me, they were watching. I felt a thrill of fear. "Who's there?" The whisper of laughter returned, this time more menacing. I swiveled toward the sound, hands clammy around the doll. "Show yourself," I shouted, heart pounding. The air thickened, and the mist swirled tighter around me. A figure stepped forward. Not Melissa, but a version darker and more distorted, features concealed in shadow. "You shouldn't be here," it hissed,
the voice chilling me to the bone. "You don't understand." I want to find her," I managed to say, though my voice quavered. The figure's laugh echoed grotesquely as it stepped closer, its face becoming clearer and revealing unsettling, twisted features. "You can't change what's been lost. The truth is a heavy burden, and it'll crush you." I backed away, clutching the doll like a lifeline. I had to stay in control. I couldn't let fear overpower me. "What do you know about Melissa? Where is she?" My words felt like a plea, a desperate grasp at hope. But the figure only sneered. "The doll won't save you. You'll wish you hadn't pursued these memories. Stop now, while you can." As it spoke, the laughter returned, swirling around me like a tempest. My surroundings began to shift again. The swings faded, replaced by a dark abyss. I struggled to hold on to the doll, but it felt slippery in my hand. Then everything went dark again, but a faint glimmer of light beckoned in the distance. I had to move. I couldn't let it go, not now. Clutching the doll, I lunged toward the light, driven by a sense of urgency. I could feel Melissa's presence fading like a shadow, and I refused to lose her again. And just as I reached the threshold of light, I heard a voice scream, "Stop!"
The energy around me crackled, and I braced myself for whatever was about to unfold. The moment the voice screamed, everything jolted to a halt. I felt the air around me tense, as if the fabric between worlds was being pulled tight, ready to snap. I turned my head, searching for the source, but the light ahead began to flicker. Shadows danced against the brightness, and I took a hesitant step back. "Who are you?" I shouted, my voice wavering. "What do you want?" My eyes darted across the darkness, but all I could see was the faint glow of the light behind me. Panic surged through me as I considered retreating into the shadows. I grasped the doll harder, feeling its small frame dig into my palms. It was the only thing connecting me to my past, to Melissa. "Your memories," the voice answered, breaking through the tension like a knife. "They are dangerous. You must remember to forget." A figure emerged from the half-light, shrouded in a familiar darkness. It was a girl, but not just any girl. She looked strikingly like me. The same wild curls, the same sharp features, but her expression twisted into something malevolent. "You can't bring her back. You never could." "Is this a trick?" I whispered, dread pooling in my stomach. "You're me, but you're not." She laughed softly, a sound that echoed with bitterness. "You've buried so much. Why dig it all up again? The past is a graveyard for a reason." "Shut up," I retorted, desperation clawing at me. "I can't lose her again." "Then let her go. Trust me." I could feel my heart racing, grappling with her words. Letting go felt impossible, akin to trying to erase the most precious parts of my life. The doll felt like a warning now, an indication of all I had lost. "Listen to me," she urged, stepping closer. "Those memories of hers are woven into your own. Every moment you cherish hides a darkness you don't understand. Think of the charm. What does it really mean?" I hesitated. "It means we wanted to be stars," I mumbled, almost to myself. But I could feel a shadow hanging over that memory now. It meant hope. Or it could mean something more sinister. You can't control what was meant to happen. The abyss around us seemed to throb. I could hear whispers blending in with the laughter from before, vague and unsettling. "You're wrong," I shouted back, feeling the weight of her presence. "I'll find the truth, no matter what." "Then you must face one more memory, and then you will see." The dark version of me extended a hand, a jagged smirk twisting her lips. "Are you ready to confront what you've avoided?" I hesitated, glancing back at the small sliver of light. It flickered as if taunting me.
What memory? The girl stepped further into the light, and I was struck by the coldness radiating from her. The day it all began, back at the creek. Then, without warning, the surroundings dissolved again, pulling me into the heart of another memory. I felt my feet leave the ground, and the world spun around me.
When it finally settled, I found myself back in my childhood, at the creek where so many laughs echoed, but this time under a dark, brooding sky. And I wasn't alone. I could feel her presence, close, but just out of reach. The doll trembled in my grip as I took a cautious step forward. That's when I saw it, the silver charm laying at the edge of the water, glinting like a lost star. The truth was waiting to drown me. The creek was murky, shrouded in a gloomy atmosphere that felt more like a nightmare than a memory. I could see Melissa's silhouette by the water's edge, her laughter playing like a haunting melody in the air, intertwining with the whispers that tugged at the edges of my consciousness. As I took a tentative step closer, my heart pounded. The terrain felt uneven, unstable, as if the very ground resented being disturbed. "Melissa?" I called, but my voice was swallowed by the oppressive silence of the surrounding woods. I remembered summers spent splashing in these waters, the promise of forever shining in her eyes. But now that innocence felt tainted. I glanced down. The charm lay just at my feet, beckoning me. With shaking hands, I reached for it. The instant my fingers brushed the cold metal, a rush of memories flooded my mind, racing to the creek with laughter, secret games, a sudden shift in the air when our escapades turned dark. I felt a pulse of emotion, love mingling with an overwhelming sense of dread. Footsteps crunched behind me. I whipped around, instinctively clutching the doll tighter as two shadowy figures emerged from the trees. Tommy and another boy, but their faces were obscured, indistinct. The light around me felt almost fragile, as if it could break under the weight of their memories. "You shouldn't have come here," Tommy's voice echoed, distorted and hollow. "You don't understand what you're digging into." "I have to know," I insisted, desperation spilling into my tone. "Where is Melissa?" As if in response, the air grew colder, and the laughter I had thought a memory turned sinister, echoing around me. "Melissa? She didn't listen," the other boy chimed in, his words sharp and cutting. "Just like you." The ground felt unstable beneath me, my footing wobbly as I glimpsed flashes of scenes, the shadow of Melissa laughing, moments of shared secrets, and another darker scene of confusion, fear, and something that hinted at malevolence beyond comprehension. The charm pulsed in my hand, the echoes tugging at something deep within me. "What happened that day?" I whispered, my voice trembling as I faced them. "She made a choice," Tommy snapped, anger swirling in his eyes. "We all thought it was just a game, but the game turned real." Suddenly, a sharp crack of thunder split the unnaturally dim sky. Electric energy crackled around us, sparking shadows that pulsated with malevolent life. I felt the fear clawing at my chest, but I couldn't back down. "I'm not here to play."
"Your memories aren't yours," Tommy countered ominously. "They belong to something else. Let them go or go with them." Before I could reply, the scene around me morphed again, and I found myself standing on the creek's bank, clearer now, the light more vibrant, the laughter more genuine. This wasn't my memory. It was something else, like being pulled into a current I couldn't fight. Confusion wrapped around me like a shroud. "Tommy!" I gasped, twisting toward him, watching as the two boys slowly began to fade into the murkiness, yet their silhouettes were locked in a casual game, playful, carefree. "It was supposed to be safe," he rasped, eyes narrowing, as if he too was fighting against something he couldn't control. But Melissa wasn't just any player. What did you do to her? My heart raced, fear and guilt intertwining, as I realized I had to confront the truth. There was something in the water, the other boy murmured, voice fading like mist. You didn't believe us. The whispers, they were real. As the last flicker of their forms disintegrated into the darkness, I felt a heavy weight in the air, the doll growing increasingly warm, pulsating with energy. I staggered back. I was suffocating under the weight of so much unsaid. Remember, a voice reverberated, one much like mine, yet laced with an unsettling echo. I looked back toward the creek water, where Melissa's laughter seemed to swirl like the currents confounding everything I knew. Melissa! My cry was desperate, longing. Where are you? Silence fell like a shroud, the water lapping gently at the bank, until the stillness fractured. In the water's depths, I could see her face shimmering, familiar but distorted, fear etched into her features. "Help me!" she screamed, and my heart shattered. In that moment, everything imploded into clarity. The doll was warm, radiating an energy that felt intrusive and familiar. Whatever dark secret it held attached itself to my memories. But for what? What bridge had it created between us? The shadows loomed closer, blurring the edges of reality. In an instant, everything felt visceral again. The games, laughter, and the echo of unfulfilled promises. The creek bubbled angrily, as if protesting against the memories I tried to force into submission. "Stop!" I shouted, stepping back from the water, recoiling from the chaos that threatened to engulf me. "I need to understand." And then I remembered something else. A warm summer day, a pact made between children of the creek, an innocent promise that somehow turned into a secret. What if we never leave? It was me, my voice ringing clear. What if we get swallowed up? "Told you the past has claws," the distorted figure of my darker self retorted, as the shadows shifted nervously around me. A labyrinth of echoes. Can you bear with it? I braced myself, clinging to the doll, stepping deeper into the swirling memories that threatened to drown me. "Melissa!" Desperation fueled my voice.
The truth is out there. Then I felt it, the pull of forces surrounding me, a whirlwind that commanded attention until I understood. This isn't the end. This is a part of us. Suddenly, I began to lose the sense of self, melting away with the swirling shadows, and within that, a forgotten part began to resurface, a whisper emerging. "But even if the past has claws, so do we," I shouted, using the last of my strength. The energy of the doll surged through me, as if promising to wake from the darkness. It felt electric. I had to fight, both for Melissa and to reclaim the memories that could save us. And just like that, I emerged from the chaos, feeling lighter, stretched across the plane of what was dark but not buried. Something opened beneath the surface, revealing the truth beneath layers of fear and regret waiting to be set free. I stood at the edge of realization, a reclaiming of spirits lost, and waiting to discover what truly bound us to those memories. As the shadows began to recede, silence enveloped me, pregnant with possibilities yet to unfold. But the question lingered. Would the truth bring us back together, or would it sever the bonds forever? I could still feel Melissa's essence shimmering just beyond my reach, waiting for me to make the final choice. The night was quiet, and though I was terrified, I felt the walls around the memory of that fateful day starting to thrum with a pulse of hope, as if the dawn might break anew. I searched deep within me, knowing I had to find a way to bridge the gap, even if it led to a question never intended to be answered. I took a deep breath. The creek had much to tell, and I was here to listen.